Connected in 3D, Real-Time Solutions and Digital Twins podcast with your host, Ashley Crowder.
Hi, and welcome to Connected in 3D, Real-Time Solutions and Digital Twins. I'm Ashley Crowder, the co-founder of Ventana. I've been working in the 3D real-time space for about 15 years. And as I've worked with more and more leaders from manufacturing, questions come up every day about how they can use digital twins, how this is changing their industry. And it really is changing every single industry, from media and entertainment to construction and manufacturing. So decided to start this podcast where I can interview some of my friends who are incredible experts in the space, starting with Marc Petit, who's been working in this space for years. He was former VP and general manager of Unreal Engine at Epic Games, where he oversaw growth across markets using real-time technology, from architecture to media and entertainment. I know before that, you were running Autodesk's media and entertainment business, steering development and marketing of the industry's leading 3D animation and VFX software products. You are one of the most knowledgeable people in the space. So thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Ashley. It's an honor to be your first guest for this podcast. And I think it's a good idea because we're going to talk about it. 3D is getting everywhere, but it still remains a complex topic to understand. So hopefully we can help together. So
definitely. What are game engines? Why are they required for digital twins? And, just kind of high level. We'll start there.
Well, I would not say that game engines are required. I would say that game engines, the game industry has a 25 years head start over the rest of the world in using real-time 3D. I look at real-time 3D as a new form of media that is interactive, that is animated, that is participative and collaborative. That's, it's a great form of it's a great media, much more powerful than video. But, it was originally developed in the gaming industry. That's why it made natural for the game engine manufacturers such as Epic say, hey, technology can be used beyond gaming. But now we're starting to see a new breed of 3D engines also coming, like Omniverse from NVIDIA. It's more of a real-time simulation engine, or even the web. We see, a flurry of 3D engines on the web, some of them with a gaming background, but some of them more geared toward simulation. Interestingly, Roblox is an interesting real-time 3D platform. Started as a simulation engine, not really a game engine. But yeah, the thing is real-time and 3D.
Yeah, no, that's completely accurate. And yeah, we actually work a lot within the web space, but and transferring between web and game engine, which that interoperability is important, which we can get into. But yeah, to your point, like Roblox is a game for kids, and but then there's manufacturing. Like, what are some of those core use cases you're seeing that are where 3D is shaping industries like film, architecture, and manufacturing?
Well, I think it's very pervasive, and there's multiple use cases. Again, think of it as a medium. I mean, real-time 3D is a good medium for the enterprise. And I think, when you look at the evolution of CG in the enterprise space, it's been used. When I was at Autodesk, a lot of architectural visualization, and the first thing we were shooting for was realism of looks, and ultimately realisms of behavior through simulation. There was a lot of usage of computer graphics technology, offline to produce good-looking images or a good-looking simulation. What was interesting started, maybe 2015, 2016, especially within Unreal Engine, is, getting this real-time aspect from games, into the enterprise space. And now real-time enables interactivity. So it's better for training, and it enables collaboration. So I think from them, now that you've got this medium that is interactive and collaborative, you start to deploy it into a number of things. With interactive walkthroughs in architectures was one of the first things we did in 2016, 2017 at Epic. And then it's starting to pick up from there, real-time car configurators for consumer was one of the other usage of interactivity. Through COVID, we saw, and with the commoditization of VR headset, we saw VR collaboration start to make a real development inside enterprise. There's still no VR for consumers, but there's actually a lot of VR usage in the enterprise because of the collaboration, multi-user nature of VR experiences. So it's getting everywhere from the early stage of conception when you can show and demonstrate the product before it exists, all the way through optimizing all the manufacturing process through collaboration, visualization, and simulation. Like the Omniverse platform, and NVIDIA is a great example of that in the robotic space. So it's getting everywhere. It's the good news.
Yeah, no, it is. And especially now with, Meta just announced their new headset. It's only $299, still has incredible XR functionality. We're seeing a lot of manufacturers in the space starting to use that, to your point, for training, um, and sales. Aztec Industries, one of our clients, they've outfitted their whole sales team with uh, Quest headsets so that they can go and walk clients through a plant. I was just at Mine Expo last week, and some of this equipment is so big. I don't even know how they got it into the conference. Like it's insane. And so being able to just throw in a headset and walk through and explain how this equipment works, not only is it easier, but it's safer if someone's never been around it. It's incredible.
When you talk about real-time 3D, XR, whether it's AR or VR, is one of the added value, but it's not a requirement. I mean, you can do 3D and deploy 3D, in a web browser or in applications, or even in a point of sale. There is a lot of interactive content now in fashion in point of sale. So I think the immersivity brought by those devices is interesting, but not a requirement to adopt the real-time 3D. There is so much value in the real-time visualization, as I said, and the simulation and the collaboration that 3D brings.
Oh yeah, that's huge, and we talk about that a lot. I mean, if you're building something web based, or many of the game engines, enable you to build something that is also can be brought up on your desktop. But if you can create content, whether it's for training or sales, but it can be used across every device, so your mobile, desktop, and headset. That gives you the most flexibility. And so often when I'm talking with executives of like, okay, I got to make this investment. How am I going to make it worth it? What do I choose? I'm always, explaining that web is great because it's the most scalable for organizations starting to scale up 3D. So many of the manufacturer we work with, they might be designing in AutoCAD or Siemens, but now they're trying to utilize those assets in more places in the business to increase speed to market, improve maintenance. What are some best practices or suggestions you have for people just getting started?
Well, I think the having 3D assets as early as possible in the life cycle of the product, I mean, is a strategic move. It's a bit expensive still right now, although with AI we're seeing a commoditization of capture and those things. But I think it has to be a strong will in the organization to say, hey, we're gonna build those 3D assets and build them in a way that they are usable. So either you derive them from design data, or you find other techniques to build those 3D assets, but they can help you. And that's the concept of digital twin. I mean, you have it all the time, and it has not only the looks but also the behavior of your physical product. And I think that's enabled at every step of the way. From early design to all the way to manufacturing, all the way to retailing and support. Then you can benefit from it. So I think it takes a commitment from the organization. If the 3D model, digital twin is an afterthought, you don't fully capture the value. So I think you need to think about your processes and make sure that you make room for it in terms of time and budget as early as possible in the life cycle, because then this is where you're going to see the most downstream value of the digital twin.
An end of life cycle and you're like, oh, let's build 3D models specifically for this use case, the economics start to not make sense because it can be expensive. It's a one-off versus, some manufacturers I talk to, you're designing in these 3D programs. Let's figure out a workflow to get these 3D assets usable across the organization. And that's when you start to see value. And it's so important to kind of pick that ideal first POC and measure it and have it be successful and then expand from there. Versus having, something in a siloed, innovation organization that really, is like a fun test, but not impacting the business. How have you seen like real time and 3D really starting to impact, workforce training, safety, and collaboration? Like, do you have any projects you're allowed to chat about that you've worked on?
No, but I think it's been gradual. We all expect it to go faster, but it's happening. I think the most striking story comes from a surgeon that used AR, in the operating room for the first time, and he said, like, do you remember when we were to drive in a city, when we have to use a paper map and we had to stop to look at the map versus having GPS turn by turn instruction? He said, for me, the use of AR during an operation is, I just stepped in the era of GPS. And for me as a surgeon, I can have much more attention to what I'm doing and to the patient because I know I'm guided and I can bring colleagues into the session in real time. So I think it's kind of a bit of an extreme, but a fantastic, example of the support you get from, 3D content. But there's a number of other use cases, in terms of training. I mean, it's a fantastic tool to put people in situation. There are some times where training simulations, there's a company called Earthbrain, in Japan. They worry about the aging of their population, especially for construction. So they have remote operated earth moving vehicles and that are remote controlled from cities, through VR and through remote control. And they do entire, construction sites and
Wow.
using that. So it's very, very science fiction. But I think you're going to see all the way through those complex use case through the cloud, where you can start blending, the purely virtual experience with what's happening in reality. Of course, you can simulate, an entire warehouse robotization, and deploy it much faster. Factory automation is another good, good example and impact of 3D and simulation. And then you got all the consumer level experiences, gamification of experiences, configurators for any built to order products, or just, Amazon. You probably know this better than anybody. You're probably the first person to know that,
Yeah.
Amazon, like is encouraging now the use of 3D for their e-commerce platform.
Yeah, Amazon last year deprecated 360 images moving to 3D because they're just seeing it increase sales, right? And that's what Amazon does, just
Yeah.
powerhouse of selling products online. But they're seeing on average, for consumers who use the 3D and view in your room, a 1.5 to 3.5x higher conversion rate, which is massive. So yeah, we've been excited to get the first API access to publish 3D to Amazon, helping them kind of build out that API so that people can do this in a more scalable way. But going back to your surgery example, yeah, I mean, there's study after study proving that VR training gets better results. So people learn faster, they retain the information better. I hope I never have to have surgery, but if I do, I'm going to ask my surgeon if they've trained on XR. Like, honestly, I'm going to. It's wild.
We live in a 3D world, so there is something that's cognitive about using 3D, where you get into it, your brain, understand it relatively quickly. Once you've passed a certain threshold of believability. And that's what, we've learned in the game industry is this notion of engagement and creating engaging content. And I think that engagement that you get from 3D, when it's done right, benefits the learning process, benefits the purchasing process. It's just, you're engaged, you're in it, you're doing it, you're interactive, you don't have that distance and that passivity that comes with those, 2D medium like video.
Yeah, definitely. And so I know we've covered like a lot of the different kind of current applications. How do you see this field evolving over the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, this year we had Meta's big announcement with Orion glasses, which I haven't tried yet, but I'm very excited to. We've got, Apple pushing Apple Vision Pro, which I really think ignited a lot of the other headset companies to like get in gear because now all of a sudden Apple's entering the game. But yeah, what do you kind of think the evolution's gonna be?
I'm going to give you a very geeky answer because I like those, and I think those headsets are going to play a big role. I agree, and especially when they get produced at scale, which is still not the case. And Orion is definitely interesting and promising. But I would say that for me the big innovation will be 64-bit in WebAssembly, proper multi-threaded in web browsers, having maybe the regulator, level the playing field between apps and web apps, because right now, as you know, the big platform, they make more money on apps than web apps, and therefore they have a tendency to, treat the web apps as second-class citizens. So anything we can do to get the web as a first-class citizen 3D, a scalable 3D platform, I think it's happening, but I think I think it needs to go faster. And, we have those blockers, like I mentioned, 64-bit in WebAssembly. Probably not going to say much to your audience, but it's like a technicality. It's the maturation of web as a 3D platform. For me, that's going to have a huge impact when we can, deliver 3D content, in a web browser for the enterprise, because, a lot of enterprise applications deliver over the web, this very, very well, but also for consumers and creating that continuum. And I think we'll see at that time, the delivery of 3D finally explode, that ultimately we can pick up in those glasses when they exist. We're going to have the game engines as well to do like more advanced experience. But I do hope that the web becomes kind of the nexus, and the core element of 3D. And then when I would say the web, I would qualify even further. Maybe not the web that we've known recently for the past few years, which is, a collection of walled gardens. Maybe go back to the origin of the web, where through HTML, you have interoperability and can move from one experience to the next at the click of a URL. And that's one of the work I've been promoting at the Metaverse Standard Forum and through my own podcast that, building the open metaverse is, going back to the roots of the web and through interoperability, so that you can, you can go from worlds to worlds and enjoy interactive 3D experiences. So I think it's not a utopia. I think, we need, it used to work like this. Walled gardens are a thing. The regulator is after them in Europe. You have multiple stores on an iPhone in Europe. It's not the case in the US. There's all kind of things you can do in Europe now that would be interesting to scale globally. So, but I think a 3D internet, that is more akin to Web 1.0 would probably be a fantastic advancement for both enterprise and consumers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, we're big proponents of WebGL and web.
I know. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here.
Yeah. because it is just more accessible. And yeah, when you think about, the desktop computer, at first you just had these applications you had to download and use, and then the internet exploded, and it was like, oh, why would I ever download an application? I can just do anything I want, access from any computer, and then keep things in the cloud, which makes complete sense.
Now, Apple is supporting WebXR. Kudos to Apple.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do the right thing.
Sometimes, yeah. They always make it difficult, but no, I mean, Apple, look, it's still the highest quality I've seen. But yeah, very excited that they're supporting WebXR because we work on that. I mean, and I think where web is so great is it's a seamless experience. So Kohler is one of our clients. If you pull up their website and click view in your room on your desktop, you can scan a QR code, see it in your phone. If you're in an Apple Vision Pro, click view in your room and it pops down immediately. So it's allowing people to shop in the same way that they've shopped before, but just be able to view it in these different mediums. So I think that's where web is so important, because it's the way people are used to finding content. Though I know there's a lot of UX improvement that can happen. I think we're still in, to your point, like Web 1.0, when people would just put like a PDF and that's was their website. We've come a long way from that. But I know you mentioned you're starting to do a lot of location-based experience again. Would love to hear more about what you're working on today.
Well, that's so, I've done a lot of virtual at Epic and was very close to the Fortnite experiment. But, I think as individuals, we're fundamentally social animals. And it was very apparent during the pandemic that Fortnite would bring people together, like the kids. It was a way to have a social, becoming kind of next generation social networks. I mean, Roblox proving it every day with on that front. But for me, I think I like to go out, and I like to go out with my kids, and we like to go out with people. So I was always interested in deploying digital content, in physical location. Always something. When I was at Epic, first thing we did in 2016 was to start reaching out to all those companies and say, hey, don't just stop video mapping, stop projecting like dumb linear content. Like, let's create interactive experiences out in the open that we can interact with, content that's living and breathing, that can evolve with whatever, how many people in the room, or with the with the forecast, or whatever, with the weather. And so recently we were lucky in Montreal. We have this company called Moment Factory, which is one of the world leaders in location-based entertainment and creating interactive experiences. And I'm helping them. We just raised some money, and we're helping them, create those and productize to scale those experiences, those formats, like night walks. If you have parks, like every city has parks, so usually you close them at night. So with some of Moment Factory's product called Lumina, you can, and it's happening in Brooklyn, in Tokyo, in Paris, everywhere. You open them at night, you create a family experience, with a theme, and you create this night walk, 45 minutes when everybody goes together with the whole family, the aunts and the grandparents, and you get a little bit of magic with video projections in trees and interactive content and all kind of things. So that's the kind of thing that the kind of experience that I really like. For me, it's completely part of that metaverse thing, and you can gamify those experiences. We have another format called Aura, which basically take buildings like cathedrals, and you can open them at night and create this amazing multimedia experience. It's going to tell you it has a cultural experiences. Like, we opened recently in the Invalides in Paris, so you can hear about the history of the building, and you can see this really amazing immersive environment. What, a little bit of storytelling, a little bit of culture. It's like an hour-long experience, and it's something you do something you do with your family. And the tagline of the company is, "We do it in public."
Yeah.
Uh, and I think
I
it's
love
it's
that.
something. And there's a number of other like real life gaming. We create those games, by projecting on the ground at large scale. And believe me, after 30 minutes, you are exhausted. And
Yeah.
that's what you want when you go out with your kids, right? You want them to come back home exhausted. And
Yes.
so we contribute to that with those called augmented games. And there's a number of other experiences. So think about deploying the mechanics of gaming, what makes gaming interesting, but in the real world. And we can. What I like about it, we'll look at it like we're going to bring back some old sites to life.
Yeah.
By bringing in interactivity and content into every city has places. They're architecturally we're not very proud of, and we need to revitalize. So we do a lot of that. And
No,
this
that's
weekend we had the opening of Billie Eilish here in Quebec, so we do a lot of immersive experiences on stage as well for rock concerts and all kind of things. So I like it. For me, it's like the next step, because I really like this to be involved in a project that has this down to earth physical and social dimension. It's like something that I'm proud to say to my kids. So now we're going to go and do that together. So very, very happy with this project.
Yeah, I love it. No, I completely agree. I mean, what originally got me into this space, honestly, was I saw Daft Punk the last time they played in the US. I think it was like 2008. It was a long time ago. And it was just the most incredible light show, projection mapping experience I had ever seen. I had never seen anything like that. And then I got down this rabbit hole and started researching immersive technology and got introduced to the Institute of Creative Technology. And then,
There
yeah,
you go.
but honestly, yeah, that was what started me down this whole path, because bringing together that immersive experience, it is like magic. It's incredible. And I've taken my family to one of those night walks.
Oh, nice.
It's so much fun. It's beautiful, and it's just helping, yeah, to your point, like revitalizing a space that was possibly unusable before. I completely passed over, but wanted to make sure we talked a little bit more about the Open Metaverse organization that you're a part of, and really what that's about, and how you see standards forming and kind of helping to bring the community together.
Yeah, so standard development is complex, and I admire the people doing it because it's a lot of long meetings to search for consensus. And I think that we have fantastic standards organization like Kronos. NVIDIA launched with a few other people the Alliance for Open USD, and we have a number of standards organization like IEEE. A lot of what we do today we have because of standardization. So, but one thing we realize, especially in the field of 3D, is that those standards, it's already complex and a fight to get standards developed. But then there was no mechanism for standards developing organization, SDOs, to kind of talk to each other, to align things, because sometimes, they were doing things different, not because they wanted things to be different, because they didn't have time to understand. So the Metaverse Standard Forum is that kind of missing link where SDOs, standard development organizations, and industry stakeholders can come and say, hey, we should do it the same. Like, take a good example, in GLTS, there was a lot of work on interactivity. It would make sense to have a self-contained, car configurator or build-to-order experience in a GLTF file. Well, then interactivity, would benefit USD as well. They probably want to do the same thing at some point. And the question is, why would you do that differently? Because when you are dealing with standardization, you're not dealing with competitive separation, you're dealing with commoditization of things. So you have even more reasons to do it the same. So that's what the Metaverse Standard Forum does. I'm co-chairing with Patrick Gozzi, the 3D Asset Interoperability Working Group, and that's what we do. We get the GLTF guys, we get all the guys say, hey, for those part of things where we need to be commoditized, let's make sure we do it the same. So we still spend a lot of time on materials. You'd think after 35 years of computer graphics, we'd have materials right, but almost there with materials.
Almost.
And
Yeah.
now the big thing is, like interactivity, like bring some basic interactivity to a model, like, again, not Call of Duty, but just a simple car configurator. And let's make sure that this is implemented in a way that enables lossless interoperability. We're not kingmakers. We're not trying to decide the standards is going to win. That's not the conversation. We want the standards to talk to each other, and we support that conversation between the SDOs and the stakeholders. So yeah, that's the Metaverse Standard Forum. The topic of the open metaverse, keeping the web open, is a different topic. Of course, the Metaverse Standard Forum has an opinion on it and try to support that agenda. But as I said, I think it's kind of in the hands of the regulator right now. I think after 10 or 12 years of walled gardens, every country has a different level of realization and different aspiration. And we're starting, in the US, it's lawsuits. This difference between the US and Europe. I'm originally from France, so I witnessed that. In Europe, they have to regulate before things happen. So sometimes they come across as overreaching, but it's the way their civil code is built. In the US, you let things happen and then you sue. And the result of that lawsuit becomes, the norm. But you see both happening. You've seen the Digital Media Act happening in Europe, which is an attempt by Europe to regulate something that they don't quite understand. So it's easy to poke holes into it, but that's the way they have to function. And then you're starting to see big lawsuits in the US also about that. So it's a decision. It's funny, we are going through massive elections, but that's not a topic. When interoperability is gone, this is not good. Think about chat. I mean, I have to know which video platform you're on to call you.
Yeah.
I have to know if you are on WhatsApp or on FaceTime. Otherwise, I will never find you. And we're getting so used to it as consumers. It's actually absolutely crazy when you think about it. Remember when we had ICQ a long time ago, when we had cross-platform, but now we live in a world where it's kind of those platforms are tolerated, and my mom is on FaceTime and I'm on WhatsApp and we don't talk.
Yeah.
One of us has to make an effort, and it's accepted, but it's a problem. So that's why I say, this notion of interoperability is critical, whether it's standards or not standards. But interoperability is what we need to shoot for. And for me, when we think about corporate responsibility, we have diversity and inclusion, and one thing we're trying to say, hey, let's try to promote interoperability, and one of those cardinal values that is gonna very generic, very easy to understand, is gonna help both the enterprise and the consumers. But look, progress is made. I use iOS 19, and now we have a decent messaging with Android users.
Yeah, we still
Things
shame.
happen. It's only 2024, and we're solving text message issues.
Yeah, we still shame the person with the green bubble who's not iOS, right? But yeah, a little more interoperable. But yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir there with Ventana. We're just trying to make it easy to manage and share 3D content everywhere. So, being able to automatically convert from GLB to USD is huge. But there's a whole alphabet of file formats and sizes, and even if GLB is what everyone wants. Well, Amazon wants GLB with specific types of textures and this file size and this, XYZ position, whereas Google wants something slightly different. And so at the end of the day, just like you have a PIM system for your 2D content to automatically resize and change it. That kind of, leads me to like AI. I mean, everything that's happening, I'm excited. I read a paper recently that Meta released on Llama, creating some 3D models, automating that. I mean, how do you see AI helping the interoperability of 3D? And then curious, what you're seeing in the regulatory space of around it.
So I mean, AI is going to be bring Gaussian fantastic tools, and I think when it's one of the reasons to be optimistic about the commoditization of 3D, because there's a lot of complex problems that AI will solve, so that it's become very practical, very economical to create 3D content for the enterprise, for individuals. Now I can take my phone and scan in 3D anything with Gaussian splatting. I mean, this is fantastic. As a 3D, somebody's been in 3D for 35 years, seeing AI is like, oh my God, finally, we will see 3D everywhere. Now, the regulatory topic is very complex. Of course, copyright laws assume there is a human in the loop. What happens with AI-generated content, AI-generated 3D content. There is a lot of, today, with Gavin Newsom in California vetoing, law around the responsibility of AI companies. And some of those responsibilities are actually built into the AI Act in Europe. Not getting into the details, but I think there are very, very complex problems. I don't even fully understand them myself. But I think it's something we have to learn. And hopefully, AI is deployed in a way that's first mindful of our data. I mean, we had privacy issues with our data. Now we have, LLMs that are trained on the entirety of the internet. But the entirety of the internet. I mean, there was been no limit. I was shocked, with the news from LinkedIn, a platform I do like. I rushed to turn off, the AI on my profile, but I was told it's too late. I've been learned, and you cannot be unlearned once you've learned.
To your point, education is power for everyone, and really why I started this podcast. And our next guest is actually going to be the co-founder of Loki. So they're an AI company using AI to automatically tag 3D assets, so you can understand, what your 3D asset is and make it searchable. Because if you've invested all this in 3D and you can't even find the asset you need, then what's the point? So that'll be next week. But Marc, thank you so much for joining. This was incredibly insightful, and really appreciate you taking the time.
Welcome. It was a great conversation. It was great to see you again, Ashley. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thanks. Bye.